Jedd's podcast is proudly brought to you by 40 Weeks Bendigo, serious about sleep. Well, g'day everyone. Welcome back to another football episode. In this week's footy episode, I chat to Peter Ryan, the Victorian FIDA Football League president. Welcome to the podcast, Pete, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, good morning, Jedd. My pleasure. My pleasure to be involved.
It's great to have you on. We'll get into it now, Pete. Can you tell us what FIDA stands for and what it is?
The acronym FIDA is Football Integration Development Association, and way back 30 years ago when we started, it's a competition for people with intellectual disability, but the integration part of it, we're hoping to develop the skills so that our players could participate in mainstream footy. And that's been successful to some extent. I guess a lot of our players prefer to play FIDA because they're not under quite as much pressure, and they're accepted for what they can do rather than being hounded to play better for a mainstream side.
It is a great opportunity that you and the rest of FIDA provide for the players to have that opportunity to play footy. But like you just said, the 30 years it's been running for, that's a massive achievement for the league and for all them people that have been involved over the years with the competition and the leagues.
Yes, look, there's no doubt we're extremely proud of the fact that we're still going after 30 years, and in fact, not just still going each year. I think the program has improved. So, there are very few programs in the world actually for people with an intellectual impairment to play team sports. So, look, there's no doubt that it's just a fantastic program in anyone's eyes.
How big is it growing, Pete, every year?
This year, before the lockdown, say 2019, the numbers were about 800 players. We were really worried with the lockdown that a lot of the players would drift away or not return, but fortunately, our numbers are back up pretty close to 800 after the lockdown. So we're really pleased with that. When all the AFL Vic staff was stood down, we had a little bit of money in the bank, so we decided we would engage Elle Dow, who's now the CEO. We engaged her to try and to make sure that we could keep the FIDA players engaged, and she did a great job with the FIDA front bar, and I think that's really helped in keeping all our players interested and involved and returning to play now that we can get out and have a kick of the footy again.
How did FIDA and clubs keep the players engaged, especially with all the lockdowns from last year with no season that wasn't played?
I think the FIDA front bar and the online activities that Elle organised, I think that went a long way towards keeping everyone sort of interested and involved. We certainly we spent a fair bit of time with the clubs too, making sure that that they kept in mind that as soon as possible we could get players out there and training and having a kick and doing all those things safely under the problems that COVID created. So I think that was the main reason, and the players in the finish were really keen to get back and have a kick of the footy, which is great.
It is definitely great, Pete, to have obviously local footy back this year. Obviously, we know there's just been other lockdown for regional and Melbourne Metropolitan, but hopefully the FIDA League can really start up in the next few weeks, hopefully.
Look, we're having a little bit of a committee meeting this morning to we have got contingency plans for the rest of the season, but we're just having a meeting this morning to see if we can get back even a bit earlier than we had planned. So I think that's over the last 18 months, the thing that's been really important is the fact that we've had a group of people from our committee that have met at least once a week and took the opportunity to go through a lot of the things that we needed to have in place when we started again. Just things like the handbook. A group of 5 of us probably spent something like 12 hours on the handbook. So I think that's really made starting up again a lot easier.
It definitely would make it a lot easier. What is some of the things that most people wouldn't see that goes on behind the scenes in football?
I think the thing that we've got 28 clubs, and obviously they're made up of people with an intellectual impairment. So as well as all the normal things that a footy competition and footy clubs have, when you put that many people together, there's always going to be issues one way or another. And I guess for us, our discipline problems are obviously slightly different to mainstream footy, but we have them just the same. We've had, since the start of our season, which, it's only 4 or 5 games, we've had a bit of racial vilification. We've had sexist remarks made to some of our females. So that there's very often something going on that the people wouldn't realise we have to deal with as far as FIDA is concerned. So we have all the problems of mainstream footy, plus a few others. But, I mean, it's such a great program, and it's, as I said before, there's very little done for people with an intellectual impairment in terms of team sport and being able to belong to a team and being involved with a team and having the commitment to make sure that they are good team and club members.
Do you think it's growing now, Pete? In regardless in what type of sport people play, but do you think there is a more of an opportunity nowadays for people with a disability to play sport?
Yes, no doubt there is. I think team sport has probably lagged a little bit behind individual sport. Inclusive Sport Australia, they've done a fantastic job in terms of the global games in 2019 in Brisbane, all that sort of thing. So there's plenty of opportunities for people to participate in individual sports, and I think now that that team sport is starting to develop in that way too. As I said before, we were one of the very few organisations anywhere in the world that had 800 players playing in 30 teams. I mean, that's quite unusual. So, but in answer to your question, I do think that I think there's a greater acceptance of all sorts of disabilities, and why not? I mean, it just gives people an opportunity to participate in a very healthy activity and not just physically healthy, a mentally healthy activity too, because they feel as though they're valued, feel as though that they're part of a larger team and group. So that's great.
It is definitely great, and you are 100% right there, Pete. It is about also physical and mental health, but it's great. It's great that they get that opportunity like the rest of the community do.
Yep.
What do you enjoy the most about being involved with FIDA?
I taught in a special school, and so obviously I'd been working with people with an intellectual disability. And I guess to go the next step and to see what happens after they left school. And when I started in a special school, there probably weren't a lot of organised activities for our students after they left special school to get involved in. So as soon as we set up FIDA, I really saw the need for a start, and I saw the enjoyment of the players involved. I also was lucky enough to have some really great parents, and listening to their stories about the difference that it made to their son or daughter, that immediately gave me a feeling that this is something that's fantastic and something worthwhile doing. So I guess that's where mainly I got the enjoyment. I'd have to say that over the 30 years, I've been involved for 30 years, but we've had some fantastic people helping. Our committee, particularly when we were linked to the amateurs, but our committee right through has been made up of people with who just were prepared to give heaps of time and effort and energy to the program. So that's made my job easier, and it's made it a lot more enjoyable.
It definitely is enjoyable to see and watch. You and the rest of the community do a wonderful job, people behind the scenes. You all should be really proud of the hard work you put in every season into the competition. What do you enjoy the most about going and watching the games, I suppose?
I've watched a lot of footy in my days because I was on the recruiting staff at Hawthorn for 25 years. So I have watched a lot of footy over the years, but probably as enjoyable as any of the footy is to go and go along to a FIDA game and just see the atmosphere and the fact that the players now, even though there's 800 players, I think there's a lot of friendship between players from different clubs and all that sort of thing. So to go along to a FIDA game is always a very pleasant thing to do. And I'd have to say also that the skills have improved so much that also makes us very proud because we've got some very good players in FIDA. One of our issues is always catering for all abilities. Our better players would get a game in a lot of mainstream, particularly reserve side, and sometimes in the senior side. So, but at the other end of the scale, obviously, we've got players who just put the footy jumper on, and love to go out there on the ground with a real footy jumper on. So that's great.
It is great, Pete. But I suppose too, the smiles that you see on their face in the games, like awesome to see. Like, I suppose the way to put it is like they may only get one handball for the day, but they're happy, they're smiling, I love it.
That's right.
That's what I'm all about. That's
no doubt about that, Jedd.
What are the differences between the Melbourne Metro and the big country competitions?
Well, Melbourne Metro has obviously been going for 30 years, so it is far closer to a normal, in inverted commas, competition. They play 10 games. They play home and away games at each other club's venue as close as possible. And it's very much more competitive than the country conferences. Country conferences, they're all different too. I personally, I'm not a huge fan of the big carnival day because it's a huge day and short quarters, all that sort of thing. I would prefer, and we're never going to really force this, but I would prefer to have a home and away game where, for instance, the Chuka go to Shepparton and they play a game there, and vice versa. I really would like to reduce the travel. Obviously, we got Bendigo out of the Northern Conference and set up the Central Conference. Well, I think we can go further, and I think there's a need for probably at least 4 or 5 conferences in Victoria, perhaps even more. I'd like to reduce the track, perhaps get another team up around Albury Wodonga or Yarrawonga. But the aim is simply to make sure that anyone in Victoria who has an intellectual impairment gets an opportunity to play footy. So I'm sort of diverging from what you asked me initially, but all the conferences are certainly different, and but we'd like to have all our players playing at least 8 games a year. Currently, some of the country conferences only play 4 or 5. I don't think that's enough, to be honest.
So with the country competitions, Pete, would you like to see that be extended to maybe 8 games next season?
Yeah. Well, certainly. I guess if we had 4 clubs in each conference, if they played a home and away game, that's 6 games. And I'd really like to try and get, particularly, Bendigo are okay now, but places like Bendigo and Ballarat and even Warrnambool to have 2 teams, because we've got lower functioning players who really we've got a duty of care to make sure that they get an opportunity to play without playing against players who are very capable, 6'2", all that sort of thing. So we'd like every club to have 2 teams. That would be one of my aims.
That's a great goal to have for the future. Hey, can you tell us what the National Football Carnival is that AFL run?
Okay, way back in, I think it was about 95 or something like that, after we started, we played an interstate game against South Australia. And that continued for many years until, I'm not sure the year we first did this, but we at FIDA decided that we needed to have a couple of other sides involved. So New South Wales got together a team, and so initially we had Vic Metro, Vic Country, South Australia and New South Wales. Now the AFL just saw the opportunity there and saw how great that was, and they took over, I think, in about 2015, and they organised a nationwide national carnival, which was just a huge success, absolutely huge success. And of course, for the AFL, it was great publicity, and was and fulfilled their role as catering for all abilities and catering for people with a disability. Unfortunately, we didn't have it last year. I think this year it will be held again, but obviously with the uncertainty of COVID at the moment, it's probably still a little bit up in the air. But it gives all our players the opportunity to pull on a Victorian jumper and go and represent the state. It is for the better players, obviously, and we do get a bit of criticism at times for not catering for the lower functioning players, but I think, who knows, down the track we might be able to do something there. But it gives our better players an opportunity to play against the best in Australia. And of course, then they pick an all-Australian side. And 2 years ago, we went to Brisbane for the Global Games with teams, sporting teams from all over the world. We played a couple of exhibition games, which were really fantastic. So getting back to your question, the National Carnival just gives all our players throughout the country, really, the opportunity to play at the highest level and represent their state.
It is a wonderful opportunity that the players all get to who represent their state. I suppose, Pete, so with the National Carnival, they spend a week away, isn't it, roughly, playing footy?
Yeah, it's roughly a week, and just the mere fact, and that's another issue there, the fact that they go away as a group with players that they may or may not know for their own team, but also generally they live in a situation where they're socialising with the players from the other states too. So I think that's fantastic in their personal development as well. And obviously they've got to look after their gear and be part of the team for the week. So that's a vital part of the National Carnival.
It definitely is great that they get the opportunity to mix with so many different people. What is FIDA's partnership with the Box Hill Hawks and the Williamstown VFL side?
Okay, when we employed Elle as CEO, obviously most of the work she would do from home, but we thought that we needed an office space just for storage and various things. I played footy at Williamstown for 5 years, so I had contacts there. Box Hill being part of Hawthorn, obviously we had contacts there as well. So we decided first of all that we'd have a day at each club as far as office space is concerned, and it's leading now to we're pretty sure that there will be a curtain raiser at either Williamstown game or a Box Hill Hawks game, or both actually. So and both those clubs have been very, very receptive to anything we've asked of them. They see it obviously as a part of their role to have a disability input, and so both Box Hill Hawks and Williamstown Footy Club have been really fantastic. The president of the Box Hill Hawks actually coached one of the FIDA sides way back, probably 25 years ago, so he was very receptive to anything we suggested. So that can only develop. I think we will probably play our Metro finals at the Box Hill City Oval, which would be great. It's a great oval and great setup there, so that'll be good.
It definitely is a great oval, Pete, and a great setup. And it is wonderful to see them clubs jump on board and support FIDA and the competition.
Yep, sure thing, Jedd.
So while we're still on that, Pete, with Box Hill and Williamstown, will that give players an opportunity for employment or to either be involved with them clubs at some stage?
Yes, we are, particularly at this stage. I guess we're a bit further ahead with Williamstown, but we'd obviously. All footy clubs need volunteers and helpers, and whether it's paid employment, we're certainly advocating for our players to be involved in those footy clubs. Footy clubs have never got enough people in terms of volunteers and workers, so we really think that that's an opportunity for some of our players to develop their skills as volunteers, and perhaps leading to some sort of employment later on.
It is a great opportunity that you and them footy clubs will get the players to be involved. Does FIDA have any major goals they would like to meet and achieve in the next few years, I suppose?
Look, we have got sort of figures in mind. We'd say the first milestone would be to have 1,000 players playing, and I think really if we hadn't have closed down for 12 months, we'd have been very close to 1,000. We've got some areas of the state where we don't have any presence, and one is Gippsland, so we're very keen to develop a Gippsland conference. We have had, to some extent, we've had some participation in the past, but for various reasons they fell over. So we're keen to get down there and make sure we get a Gippsland conference. As I said before, the secret of this program is really to get more players involved. I'd like all large country towns to have two sides, and not necessarily competing sides, but for a club to have the opportunity to have two teams where the lower functioning players are playing against other players of their own ability. So that's a long-term goal, obviously. So each year we'll just look at trying to get new. We've had inquiries from at least 4 clubs who are keen to get going in 2022. Whether they do or not's another thing, but at least we're getting a lot of interest from clubs who are wishing to get involved in the program. The more publicity we get, the better, obviously, and people realise just what a great program it is and how that can help their own clubs. That's the other thing. You did mention about employment. Just having our players around the club to help run water or whatever they need as volunteers, and obviously to bring more money into the club just by participating. That'd be great.
It definitely would be great. Hey, you guys run a great program, and it is definitely wonderful to see so many mainstream clubs jumping on board and supporting the FIDA local teams.
Yep. No, look, 30 years really, they've flown obviously, but, we couldn't be prouder of what we've got there in terms of what we do for people with an intellectual impairment. Very often, as far as disability is concerned, they tend to not get as much publicity, I guess, as the blind footy and the wheelchair footy and all that sort of thing. So we're pretty happy about what we do for people with an intellectual impairment.
You guys should be extremely proud. Well, Pete, thank you so much for your time today and coming on the podcast and chatting about FIDA. Hopefully this will give you some great publicity.
Yeah, look, thank you for the opportunity, Jedd, and I'll try and get up to watch the Suns play some stage in the next couple of months. So I'll catch up with you then.
No worries. Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jedd.
No worries. This podcast is proudly brought to you by 40 Winks Bendigo, serious about sleep.